All right. This is the Red Book from Carl Jung, written in the early 1900s. This book is described by him as the confrontation of the unconscious, and it's his journey into the mystical, which is his internal self. We're going to start by reading from the first chapter, and now also this book is actually completely written in Latin, so we're going to be going through the translation in the back. We're going to be reading the first foreword, which was the photos that I saw, or that I just showed. Now, keep that thought in mind, the confrontation of the unconscious, and allow that to kind of sit with you as we go through these writings. Now, the first few paragraphs are actually from the Luther's Bible, which he's quoted. The birth of the Savior, the development of the redeeming symbol, takes place where one does not expect it, and from precisely where a solution is most improbable. All right, so the first section is from Isaiah 53. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs, and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. Isaiah 53. For unto, as a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Isaiah 9:6. John said, and the world was made flesh, and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John 1:14. Isaiah said, the wilderness and the celerity place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice even with joy and singing. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap as a hart, and the tongue of the dumb sing. For in the wilderness shall waters break out, and streams in the desert. And the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water. In the habitation of dragons, where each lay, shall be grass with reeds and rushes. And an highway shall be there, and a way, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those, the wayfaring men, though fools shall not err therein. Isaiah 35. Written by Carl Jung in his own hand in his house in the year 1915. So this is from Carl Jung, this next segment. If I speak in the spirit of this time, I must say, no one and nothing can justify what I must proclaim to you. Justification is superfluous to me, since I have no choice, but I must. I have learned that in addition to the spirit of this time, there is still another spirit at work, namely that which rules the depths of everything contemporary. The spirit of this time would like to hear of use and value. I also thought this way, and my humanity still thinks this way. But that other spirit forces me nevertheless to speak beyond justification, use, and meaning. Filled with human pride and blinded by the presumptuous spirit of the times, I long sought to hold that other spirit away from me, but I did not consider that the spirit of the depths, from the time immortal and for all the future, possesses a greater power than the spirit of this time, who changes with the generations. The spirit of the depths have subjugated all pride and arrogance to the power of judgment. He took away my belief in silence. He robbed me of joy, explaining and ordering things. He let my devotion to the ideals of this time die out in me. He forced me down to the last and simplest things. The spirit of the depths took my understanding and all my knowledge and placed them at the service of the inexplicable and paradoxical. He robbed me of speech, writing for everything that was not in his service, namely the melting together of sense and nonsense, which produces the supreme meaning. But the supreme meaning is the path, the way, and the bridge to what is to come, that is God yet to come. It is not the coming God himself, but his image which appears in the supreme meaning. I want to preface this to a note that says, from one of his works in 1912, the transformations and symbols of the libido. Jung interpreted God as a symbol of the libido. In his subsequent work, Jung laid great emphasis on the distinction between the God image and the metaphysical existence of God. Back to it. God is an image, and those who worship him must worship him in the images of the supreme meaning. The supreme meaning is not a meaning and not an absurdity. It is image and force in one, magnificence and force together. The supreme meaning is the beginning and the end. It is the bridge of going across and fulfillment. The other gods died of their temporality, yet the supreme meaning never dies. It turns into meaning and then into absurdity, and out of the fire and blood of their collision, the supreme meaning rises up, rejuvenated anew. The image of God has a shadow. The supreme meaning is real and casts a shadow. For what can be actual and corporal and have no shadow? The shadow is nonsense. It lacks force and has no continued existence through itself. But nonsense is the inseparable and underlying brother of the supreme meaning. Like plants, so men also grow, some in the light, others in the shadows. There are many who need the shadows and not the light. The image of God throws a shadow that is just as great as itself. The supreme meaning is great and small. It is wide as the space of the starry heaven and as narrow as the cell of the living body. The spirit of this time in me wanted to recognize the greatness and extent of the supreme meaning, but not its littleness. The spirit of the depths, however, conquered this arrogance, and the spirit The spirit of the depths, however, conquered this arrogance, and I had to swallow the small as a means of healing the immortal in me. It completely burnt up my innards, since it was inglorious and unheroic. It was even ridiculous and revolting, but the pliers of the spirit of the depths held me, and I had to drink the bitterest of all droughts. In that reference, he seems to be referring to the episodes that occur later in the text, the healing of Isdubar, and the drinking of the bitter drink prepared by the celerity. The spirit of this time tempted me with the thought that all this belongs to the shadowness of the God image. This would be pernicious deception, since the shadow is nonsense, but the small, narrow, and banal is not nonsense, but one of both, of the essence of the Godhead. I resisted recognizing that the everyday belongs to the image of the Godhead. I fled this thought. I hid myself behind the highest and coldest stars, but the spirit of the depths caught up with me and forced the bitter drink between my lips. The draft continues, "Who drinks this drink will never again thirst for the world, nor for the afterlife, since he drank crossing and completion. He drank the hot melting river of life, which congeals to hard ore in his soul and awaits new melting and mixture." Wow. The spirit of this time whispered to me, the supreme meaning, this image of God, this melting together of the hot and the cold, that is you, and only you. But the spirit of the depths spoke to me. You are an image of the unending world, all the last mysteries of becoming and passing away live in you. If you did not possess all of this, how could you know? For the sake of my human weakness, the spirit of the depths gave me this world. For the sake of my human weakness, the spirit of the depths gave me this word. Yet this word is so superfluous, since I did not speak it freely, but because I must. I speak because the Spirit robs me of joy, and life I do not speak. The draft continues, "He who knows understands me, and sees that I am not lying. May each one inquire of his own depth whether he needs what I say. I am the sheriff who brings it and does not know what he carries in his hand. It would burn his hands if he did not place it where his master orders him to lay it. The spirit of our time spoke to me and said, 'What dire urgency could be forcing you to speak all of this?' This was an awful temptation. I wanted to ponder what inner or outer bind could force me into this, and because I found nothing that I could grasp, I was near to making one up. But with this, the spirit of our time had almost brought it about that instead of speaking. I was thinking again about reasons and explanations, but the spirit of the depths spoke to me and said, 'To understand a thing is a bridge and possibility of returning to the path. But to explain a matter is arbitrarily and sometimes even murder. Have you counted the murderous among the scholars?'" Wow. This is a profound quote here. To understand a thing is a bridge and possibility of returning to the path. We really do let our curiosity take us off our path sometimes, but in due faith, we always come back to it because we learned a valuable lesson from that curiosity. Sometimes we don't even have to explain it, right? So right after that, he says, "But to explain a matter is arbitrary and sometimes even murder. Have you counted the murderers among the scholars?" Where you have someone that just wants to over-explain. For righteousness, usually. Anyway, but the spirit of this time stepped up to me and laid before me huge volumes which contained all of my knowledge. Their pages were made of ore, and a steel stylus had engraved inexorable words in them. And he pointed to these inexorable words and spoke to me and said, "What you speak, that is madness. It is true, it is true. What I speak is the greatness and intoxication and ugliness of madness." But the spirit of the depths stepped up to me and said, "What you speak is, the greatness is, the intoxication is, the undignified is. The sick, the paltry dailiness, it all is. It runs in all the streets, lives in all the houses, and rules the day of all humanity. Even the eternal stars are commonplace. It is a great mistress and the one essence of God. One laughs about it, and laughter too is. Do you believe, man of this time, that laughter is lower than worship? Where is your measure, false measurer? The sum of life decides in laughter and in worship, not your judgment. The sum of life decides in laughter and in worship, not your judgment. I have to read it again. I think this is one of the most profound statements that you can take away from this initial foreword. The sum of life decides in laughter and in worship, not your judgment. I must also speak the ridiculous. You coming men, you will recognize the supreme meaning by the fact that he is laughter and worship, a bloody laughter and a bloody worship. A sacrificial blood binds the poles. Those who know this laugh and worship in the same breath. After this, my humanity approached me and said, "What solitude, what coldness of desolation you lay upon me when you speak such. Reflect on the destruction of being and the streams of blood from the terrible sacrifice that the depths demand." That's a reference to a vision that is following now. But the spirit of the depths said, "No one can or shall halt sacrifice. Sacrifice is not destruction. Sacrifice is the foundation stone of what is to come. Have you not had any monasteries? Have you not had monasteries? Have not countless thousands gone into the desert? You should carry that monastery in yourself. The desert is within you. The desert calls you and draws you back. And if you were fettered to the world of this time with iron, the call of the desert would break all chains. Truly, I prepare you for solitude." After this, my humanity remained silent. Something happened to my spirit, however, which I must call mercy. My speech is imperfect, not because I want to shine with words, but out of the impossibility of finding those words. I speak in images. With nothing else, I can express the words from the depths. The mercy which happened to me gave me belief, hope, and sufficient daring, not to resist further the spirit of the depths, but to utter his word. But before I could pull myself together to really do it, I needed a visible sign that would show me that the spirit of the depths in me was the same time the ruler of the depths of the world affairs. It happened in October of the year 1913 as I was leaving alone for a journey. That during the day I was suddenly overcome in broad daylight by a vision. I saw a terrible flood that covered all the northern and low-lying lands between the North Sea and the Alps. It reached from England up to Russia and from the coast of the North Sea right up to the Alps. I saw yellow waves, swimming rubble, and the depth of countless thousands. This vision lasted for 2 hours. 2 hours. It confused me and made me ill. I was not able to interpret it. 2 weeks passed, then the vision returned, still more violent than before. And an inner voice spoke, "Look at it. It's completely real, and it will come to pass. You cannot doubt this." I wrestled again for 2 hours with this vision, but it held me fast. It felt more exhausted. It left me more exhausted and confused, and I thought my mind had gone crazy. Jung discussed this vision on several occasions, stressing different details. In his 1925 seminar, Analytical Psychology, to Marika Alade, and in the memoirs, Jung was on the way to Schaffhausen, where his mother-in-law lived. Her 57th birthday was on October 17th, and the journey by train takes about 1 hour. Fun fact. From then on, the anxiety toward the terrible event stood directly before us. It kept coming back. Once I saw a sea of blood over the northern lands. In the year 1914, in the month of June, at the beginning and the end of the month, at the beginning of July, I had the same dream 3 times. I was in the foreign land, and suddenly, overnight, and right in the middle of the summer, a terrible cold descended from space. All seas and rivers were locked in ice. Every green living thing had frozen. The second dream was thoroughly similar to this, but the third dream, at the beginning of July, went as follows. I was in a remote English land. It was necessary that I return to my homeland with a fast ship as speedy as possible. I reached home quickly, and there I found, strangely enough, my friend who had eventually taken the same faster ship without my noticing. Okay? In my homeland, I found that in the middle of the summer, a terrible cold had fallen from space, which had turned every living thing into ice. There stood a leaf-bearing but fruitless tree, whose leaves have turned into sweet grapes, full of healing juice through the working frost. Ice wine is made by leaving grapes on the vine until they are frozen by frost. They are then pressed and the ice is removed, leading to a highly concentrated and delectable sweet wine. Oh, ice wine sounds fantastic. I picked some of the grapes and gave them a great waiting throng. In reality, now it was so. At the time, when the Great War broke out between the people of Europe, I found myself in Scotland. Compelled by the war, and chose the fastest ship and shortest route home. I encountered the colossal cold that froze everything. I met up with the flood, the sea of blood, and found my barren tree whose leaves the frost had transformed into a remedy. And I plucked the ripe fruit as I gave it to you, and I not know what I poured out for you, what bittersweet, intoxicating drink, which left on your tongue an aftertaste of blood. In this next segment, he's speaking to his friends. Believe me, it is no teaching and no instruction that I give you. On what basis I should presume to teach you? I give you news of the way this man, but not of your own way. My path is not your path. Therefore, I cannot teach you. The way is within us, but not in God's, nor in teaching, nor in laws. Within us is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. I want to reread this excerpt again. It is no teaching and no instruction that I give you. On what basis should I presume to teach you? I give you news of the way, this man, but not of your own way. My path is not your path, therefore I cannot teach you. The way is within us, but not in God's, nor in teachings, nor in laws. Within us is the way, the truth, and the life. Woe betide those who live by way of examples. Life is not within them. If you live according to an example, you thus live the life of that example. But who should live your own life if not yourself? So live yourselves. This is not a law, but notice of the fact that the time of example and law and of the straight line drawn in advance has become overripe. The signposts have fallen, unblazed trails lie before us. My tongue shall wither if I serve up laws, if I prattle to you about teachings. Those who seek such will leave my table hungry. Wow. The signpost, do not be greedy, are the fertile acre. Hold on, I'm going to reread this. The signposts have fallen. Unblazed trails lie before us. Do not be greedy to gobble up the fruits of foreign fields. Do you not know that you yourselves are the fertile acre which bears everything that avails you? Yet who today knows this? Who knows the way to the eternally fruitful climes of the soul? You seek the way through mere appearances, you study books and give ear to all kinds of opinion. What good is all that? There is only one way, and that is your way. Only one law exists, and that is your law. Only one truth exists, and that is your truth. You seek the path. I warn you away from my own. It can also be the wrong way for you. May each go his own way. I will be no savior, no lawgiver, no master teacher unto you. You are no longer little children. One should not turn people into sheep, but sheep into people. The spirit of the depth demands this. And who is beyond present and past? Speak right for those who want to listen and read, but do not run after men, so that you do not soil the dignity of humanity. It is a rare good. A sad demise in dignity is better than an undignified healing. Whoever wants to be a doctor of the soul sees people as being sick. He offends humanity dignity. It is presumptuous to say that man is sick. Whoever wants to be the soul's shepherd treats people like sheep. He violates human dignity. It is insolent to say that people are like sheep. Who gives you the right to say that man is sick and a sheep? Give him human dignity, so he will find his ascendancy or downfall his way. There really is a lot about the not judging of others within this chapter, and really focusing on what is right to you does not have to be right for someone else. And you have to accept that, especially within your friends and the people that are close to you. All right, where are we? Giving laws, wanting improvements, making things easier has all become wrong and evil. May each one seek out his own way. The way leads to mutual love and community. Men will come to see and feel the similarity and commonality of their ways. Laws and teachings held in common compel people to solitude, so that there may escape the pressure of undesirable contact. But solitude is what makes people hostile and venomous. Think about how our society has become more based around personal solitude and what that's created. Laws and teachings held in common compel people to solitude, so that they may escape the pressure of undesirable contact. We like to avoid, right? We want to avoid the undesirable things, the hard conversations, all of that. But that solitude is what makes us hostile and venomous. Therefore, give people dignity and let each of them stand apart, so that each may find his own fellowship and love it. Power stands against power, contempt against contempt, love against love. Give humanity dignity and trust that life will find the better way. The one eye of the Godhead is blind. The one ear of the Godhead is deaf. The order of its being is crossed by chaos. So be patient with the crippledness of the world and do not overvalue its consummate beauty. This is all, my dear friends, that I can tell you about the grounds and aims of my message, which I am burdened with the patient donkey with a heavy load. He is glad to put it down. That is chapter 1. Let's sit with some of the things that stood out to us and see how we can reflect on our own actions, desires, and habits. And let's see what happens. Read the next chapter soon.